Randy Savage was more than just "Ooh yeah" and snapping into Slim Jims. Behind the sunglasses and the intensity was a man who loved deeply, struggled fiercely, and left a mark on wrestling that few can match. Let's talk about the real Randy Savage. Born Randy Mario Poffo on November 15, 1952, Savage was more than just a wrestler. He was a larger-than-life personality. With 10 world championship reigns, including 2 WWF and 4 WCW titles, Savage was a true superstar. Although he might have seemed larger than life, but Randy Savage was human, just like us. He had his ups and downs, and sometimes those downs were pretty tough. Let's start with something that was a big part of Savage's career, his relationship with Miss Elizabeth. Fans loved their pairing, both on screen and off. They seemed like the perfect couple, but the reality was much more complicated. Randy loved Elizabeth deeply, but his love sometimes crossed into being overly possessive. He was known to get intensely jealous whenever she got attention from other wrestlers or even fans. This wasn't just part of the show, it was real. Backstage, Savage would go out of his way to keep Elizabeth separate from others. There were stories of him having her hide in locker rooms or stay isolated from the rest of the roster. He closely monitored who she spoke to and where she went, which created a very stifling environment for her. Elizabeth was incredibly loyal to Randy for many years, but this level of control took a toll. Their relationship, which started with so much love and promise, eventually fell apart under the weight of these issues. It's one of those things where you see the good intentions, but the way it played out just didn't work. Now let's talk about a rumor that has followed Randy Savage for decades. This one involves Stephanie McMahon, the daughter of Vince McMahon. At one point, there was a claim that Randy had an inappropriate relationship with Stephanie when she was a teenager. It's important to note that there's no evidence to back this up, and both Stephanie and Randy denied it ever happened. Still, this rumor caused a lot of damage to Randy's career. Some believe it's the reason Vince McMahon essentially blacklisted him from WWE for so many years. Others think the rumor was fabricated as an excuse to justify his sudden departure from the company. Whatever the case, the truth behind this story has never been fully revealed, and it remains one of wrestling's biggest mysteries. Randy Savage was also known for his intensity. I mean, the man didn't just play a character, he became the character. His dedication to wrestling was unmatched, but that same passion made him tough to work with at times. He was incredibly detail-oriented, insisting on planning his matches down to the tiniest move. This level of control sometimes clashed with other wrestlers who preferred a more flexible, spontaneous approach. His insistence on doing things his way led to backstage tensions. Some even felt that the Macho Man persona bled into his real-life personality, making it hard to separate the man from the character. Then there were the whispers about drug use. Like many wrestlers of his time, Randy dealt with the physical toll of performing night after night. This led to rumors about his use of painkillers, and in some cases, even cocaine. These allegations were never officially confirmed, but they added to the perception of Randy as a troubled and complex individual. If these rumors were true, it might explain some of his mood swings and erratic behavior over the years. It's sad to think about, but wrestling during that era was incredibly demanding, and many stars turned to unhealthy ways to cope with the pressure. Another lesser-known controversy came later in Randy's life, involving a legal battle over the name Gorgeous George. This name had been licensed to Stephanie Bellers, who wrestled under that moniker while she was in a relationship with Randy. After their relationship ended, she used the name in an adult film, and Randy sued her and a film producer over it. The lawsuit showed just how protective Randy was, not just of his personal life, but of anything he felt belonged to him. He was willing to go to great lengths to defend what he believed was rightfully his, even if it meant heading to court. Randy's life had its ups and downs, but his story took a heartbreaking turn in 2011. On May 20th of that year, Randy was driving in Florida with his wife Lynn when tragedy struck. He suddenly lost control of his Jeep and crashed into a tree. At first it was reported as a car accident, but later we learned the real cause. Randy had suffered a massive heart attack while driving. The autopsy revealed that Randy had an enlarged heart and severe blockage in his coronary arteries. It turns out he had been living with undiagnosed heart disease, and the heart attack was a tragic consequence of that condition. He was just 58 years old. Randy's death was a shock to everyone, fans, fellow wrestlers, and his loved ones. He was such a larger-than-life figure that it was hard to believe he could be gone. His passing reminded us all how fragile life is and the importance of taking care of our health, especially as we get older. Even after his death, Randy Savage's legacy continues to shine. In 2015, he was posthumously inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, a long overdue recognition of his contributions to the industry. For many fans, this was a moment of closure, a way to celebrate everything Randy had achieved in his incredible career. At the end of the day, Randy Macho Man Savage was a man of passion, talent, and complexity. He wasn't perfect, and his life had its fair share of challenges and controversies. But his impact on wrestling is undeniable. He brought excitement, energy, and unforgettable moments to the ring, leaving a lasting legacy that fans still celebrate today. Speaking of legacy, if you are a great fan like me, make sure you stay, because now we have the epic rundown of his dynamic career. I'm sure you'll love it. Before wrestling, Randy had a completely different dream. He didn't start out wanting to be a wrestler like his father, Angelo Poffo, who was already a respected name in the wrestling world. Instead, young Randy wanted to play professional baseball. He was an incredible athlete and spent years in the minor leagues, hoping to make it to the big leagues. But when a shoulder injury made that dream harder to achieve, Randy started thinking about a new path. And that's when wrestling came into his life. At first, wrestling wasn't glamorous for Randy. He wrestled in small, regional promotions, places where wrestlers worked hard to build their names. Randy didn't step into the ring as the Macho Man right away. He wrestled under his real name, Randy Poffo, but something didn't quite fit. He needed a persona, something larger than life that matched his intense energy. That's when the name Macho Man came into the picture, inspired by his wild, high-energy style. The name was perfect, and Randy leaned into the character. He wasn't just a wrestler, he became a showman. He created a look with flashy outfits, sunglasses, and brightly colored robes. He developed the deep, growling voice and the catchphrases like, "Oh yeah," that fans couldn't get enough of. Randy was no longer just a wrestler. He was someone people couldn't take their eyes off. By the mid-1980s, Randy Savage was starting to make a name for himself in the wrestling world. His talent and charisma caught the attention of the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, now WWE, and in 1985 he joined the company. From the very beginning, it was clear Randy wasn't going to be just another wrestler. His WWF debut was a huge deal. He came in as a free agent, and the storyline was that every manager in the company wanted to represent him. But Randy made a surprising choice. He introduced Miss Elizabeth as his manager. Elizabeth wasn't just a manager, she was his real-life wife. Together, they became one of the most iconic duos in wrestling history. Fans loved Randy and Elizabeth. She was calm, graceful, and elegant, the perfect counterbalance to Randy's wild, unpredictable energy. Their partnership added something special to Randy's character, and fans were hooked from the start. Randy's climb to the top of the WWF was quick. In 1986, he won the Intercontinental Championship by defeating Tito Santana. This was more than just a title win. It was Randy's moment to prove he was a star. And boy, did he prove it. One of his greatest matches came at WrestleMania III in 1987 when he faced Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. This match is still considered one of the best in wrestling history. Every move, every moment was perfectly executed. The crowd was on the edge of their seats, and even though Randy lost the match, he left as a bigger star than ever. A year later, Randy reached the pinnacle of his career. At WrestleMania IV, he won the WWF World Heavyweight Championship in an epic tournament, defeating 4 opponents in one night. When Randy stood in the ring with the championship belt and Elizabeth by his side, it became one of the most iconic moments in wrestling history. As champion, Randy carried the WWF on his shoulders. He had legendary rivalries with stars like Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. His storyline with Hogan, where the two formed the Mega Powers tag team before eventually becoming bitter enemies, was one of the most memorable storylines of that era. But as successful as Randy was, his career wasn't without challenges. By the early 1990s, things started to change. Randy's real-life marriage to Miss Elizabeth was falling apart, which added strain to their on-screen partnership. Around the same time, the WWF was shifting its focus to younger stars like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Randy, who had been one of the top stars for years, found himself being moved out of the spotlight. It wasn't easy for Randy to step back. Wrestling wasn't just his job, it was his passion. But instead of being the main event, Randy was put into a commentator role, calling matches from ringside. While he was still a beloved figure, it was clear that his days as WWF's top star were over. In 1994, Randy made a surprising move. He left WWF and joined their biggest competitor, World Championship Wrestling, WCW. Fans were thrilled to see Randy back in action, and for a while it seemed like he had found a new home. In WCW, Randy had some incredible moments. He had rivalries with Ric Flair, Sting, and Diamond Dallas Page, and he even became part of the infamous New World Order NWO faction alongside Hulk Hogan. Randy's presence in WCW helped the company during its most successful years, but as the 1990s came to an end, WCW started to lose its momentum, and so did Randy's career. Age and injuries began to catch up with him, and by the early 2000s, Randy was wrestling less and less. His final matches didn't have the same magic as his earlier ones, but his legacy was already cemented. Even after stepping away from wrestling, Randy remained a pop culture icon. He appeared in commercials, TV shows, and movies. Who could forget his role as Bonesaw McGraw in Spider-Man? Fans still loved him, and his influence on the wrestling world was undeniable. But in 2011, tragedy struck. On May 20th, Randy suffered a heart attack while driving with his wife Lynn in Florida. He lost control of his car and crashed into a tree. Randy was only 58 years old. His death shocked the wrestling world. Fans, wrestlers, and friends mourned the loss of a true legend. But even in his passing, Randy's legacy lived on. In 2015, Randy was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, a long overdue recognition of his incredible career. His brother, Lanny Poffo, accepted the honor on his behalf, and fans celebrated the man who gave so much to the wrestling industry. Randy was more than just an athlete. He was an artist in the ring. His matches weren't just fights, they were stories. He could make you feel every move, every moment of struggle, and every victory. Wrestlers today still study his matches, learning from the way he combined athleticism, psychology, and showmanship. His influence didn't stop at wrestling. Randy was one of the first wrestlers to cross over into mainstream pop culture. From his famous Slim Jim commercials to his role as Bonesaw McGraw in Spider-Man, Randy became a household name even for people who didn't watch wrestling. His voice, his style, and his catchphrases are still recognized and celebrated. But perhaps the most important part of his legacy is the connection he made with fans. Randy gave everything he had to entertain. He wasn't just performing for a paycheck. He wanted to create moments that people would remember forever, and he succeeded. When Randy was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2015, it was a moment of celebration. Fans around the world came together to honor his career, his contributions, and his unforgettable character. Wrestlers who grew up watching him spoke about how much he inspired them, and it was clear that the Macho Man had left a permanent mark on the industry. Even now, over a decade after his passing, Randy Savage remains one of the most beloved figures in wrestling history. His matches are rewatched, his promos are quoted, and his energy continues to inspire. Randy's legacy isn't just about what he did in the ring, it's about the passion and excitement he brought to the world. He wasn't perfect, none of us are, but what he gave to the wrestling world is something few could match. He entertained millions, inspired countless wrestlers, and left behind memories that will last forever. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the life and career of the Macho Man. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories about wrestling's greatest legends. Let's keep celebrating the icons who made wrestling the incredible spectacle we all love. And as Randy himself would say, oh yeah.